Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Jessica Clemons and she's back! I'm talking about Ironheart. Ooh-wee! Ironheart dropped June 24th with a 3-episode premiere and man, do I love this show. After being expelled from MIT, Riri takes flight back home to Chi-Town and begins working with and for some questionable people to create something iconic. As you'd assume, these obstacles force Riri into some immoral and illegal situations, and we get some little Mephisto details hidden in the background. So let's get through it. I'll be breaking down all 3 episodes in this one video, so if you're late to episode 2 or 3, you better go watch them right now and then come back to this video because I'm gonna talk about all the details, all the Easter eggs from 1, 2, and 3 all smushed together. But before I get into it, make sure to check out nerdride.shop where you can find the latest and greatest in New Rockstars merch. Right now, you can grab a shirt inspired by the biggest movie of the summer. I'm talking Fantastic Four. I'm also talking Superman. I'm also talking Jurassic World. Grabbing some merch from nerdride.shop is the best way to support the channel and look great doing it. And we have some Ironheart merch coming. It's Mephisto, and who doesn't want a good Mephisto shirt? Or you can get the Ironheart merch. Okay, let's get into it. Episode 1 is titled Take Me Home. In this episode, Riri returns home to Chicago, Illinois, where she is recognized as the semi-famous local hero who was admitted into MIT. As Marvel Studios told us, this series takes place right after Wakanda Forever, which was in spring 2025. However, I will say, Cousin John notes in episode 3, it's the hottest day in October. From the featurette we saw with Jim Rash's character using a box with July 25th, 2025, I believed it took place in summer of July around She-Hulk, but alas, it's October 2025 as confirmed by Cousin John, so around Miss Marvel time. The exact placement of the MCU TV shows on this timeline isn't overly important, but seeing how characters could influence one another's actions are kind of interesting. Ironheart, Echo, She-Hulk, and Miss Marvel are all around the same time, late spring, summer to like fall of 2025. Fortunately, Riri is in Chicago, separated from the others, so no one should be crossing too many wires. You hear the film reel begin to turn and we're seeing home videos of Natalie and Riri. This is also spliced with some snippets we'll see later, a person in a white jacket with red accents, which I assume is Riri, and Natalie spinning in the stool. This is a night that tainted Riri's memories, the night her stepfather and best friend died, and she survived. Pieces of their past where we see baby Riri played by Elise Elna Lewis and young Natalie played by Kent Churchill. Now, Natalie is played by Lyric Ross, who once they joined the cast was labeled as Riri's best friend, and we assumed it would be Natalie. In the comics, Natalie Washington was a neighbor of Riri who became a very close friend. When Riri was 13, during a family picnic, Natalie died from a drive-by shooting. Later in the comics, Riri created a new AI for her suit, scanning and compositing her brain waves and memories to create the Neuro-Autonomous Technical Assistant and Laboratory Intelligence Entity, aka NATALIE. Natalie, which we'll see her do exactly that in this episode. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, how this all kind of reeks of Wanda and White Vision, and this might be a big feature in Vision Quest. Riri says she's gonna be bigger than Steve Jobs, bigger than Bill Gates, bigger than Pym, and everyone knows who Pym is, Pym Technologies, and bigger than Stark, who we fondly know for Stark Industries. This is funny to me because every time they use real world people, that immediately makes them canon within the MCU as well. However, Bill Gates has been canonized since the first Iron Man movie where they photoshopped Tony over Paul Allen, and so is Steve Jobs and Captain America the Winter Soldier. Also, when asked what Natalie would want more than anything, she says a night with Thor and his hammer, and girl, me too. RIP to the baddies, they're always gone. Alter by Dizzy Faye plays, and we've seen this scene in the trailer. She's wearing the Jordan and Nina Chanel Abney hoodie. This is supposed to reflect Boston. This is actually the Kodatek Square in Georgia, a tech spot with startups and corporate workers among the many restaurants and retail stores. This montage contains some scenes from Wakanda Forever, like this scene before she confronts the boy for not paying her. We learn that Riri has been running a long con game, doing people's work and getting paid to make a better suit. We also see Shuri working in her lab at the end of Wakanda Forever, and she advises Riri to stop her homework for hire business, and that if she gets caught, she won't be able to help her. Riri didn't take that advice though, as she gets expelled for selling homework a little bit later. We're then taken to the MIT lab, specifically this is the Stark Annex hangar. As we may remember, the September Foundation was given to students of MIT, funded by Tony Stark in Civil War, and the residual funding from Stark, I assume, went into their research facilities. Riri refers to her time in Wakanda as her internship abroad, and she understands that she needs resources to be great. We then see a lecture given by this professor. From the specific words shown, like displacement of professions and technology and the evolution of belief systems, I believe this is a seminar on artificial intelligence, a massive theme of this show and Ironheart. From my perspective, the concept of technology and the evolution of belief systems, especially in relation to the whole enchilada of Ironheart, explores how technology has influenced us through this digital age. It examines the relationship between the evolution of AI and ethical responsibility. To me, this is how I interpret the lecture in connection with the show. We'll see a lot of sadness and bonding coming from AIs this premiere, and it's just not, the healthy alternative kind of way, you know what I'm saying? I also like that Riri notes that her AI already took millions to make, because to make a Jarvis level AI like Tony did would cost billions of dollars. Ironically, the library section that we're now taken to is labeled with new materials, and Riri's stacking that cash for that exact reason, for new materials. The book Riri's holding is Look Out for the Little Guy, Scott Lang's book, but the book she hands the boy with the flash drive in is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. It follows the childhood and young adult years of Pip, a blacksmith's apprentice in a village who unexpectedly inherits a large fortune from a mysterious benefactor. Chapter 2, The Thing I Contemplated Must Be Done, focuses on Pip's return home after, spoilers, encountering the convict in the marshes who, surprise surprise, is Pip's secret benefactor. He also steals food and like files from home to take to this convict, and he starts feeling like guilt and fear as he's doing all of this, kind of like Riri with the hood and the team and what she's gonna be doing this episode. But what's more important is that Pip is a lot like Riri, and that Pip also came from humble beginnings and has been swindled into believing his life would ultimately be better with money given to him by a convict, just like Riri. Riri's noted Griot's algorithm, which was what Shuri used in Wakanda Forever. That was her AI system. She flips through pages of Griot's formula, and let me tell you, I can't understand any bit of this, but the formula is also mixed with sketches of her armor pieces. Riri's planning to create Iron Man-like suits for first responders, search and rescue teams, for firefighters, so she says. And it's not a bad thing, but like Joe warns her in episode 3, last man with the idea that these suits could help the world made Ultron.
I see a suit of armor around the world.
Sounds like a cold world, Tony.
I've seen colder. This one, this very vulnerable blue one, it needs Ultron. Imagine that.
So we see the crossroads Riri will soon have to face between being bad and doing bad things and being bad but with good intentions. We then meet Professor Wilkes, played by comedian and actor Jim Rash, who you might remember from Community. He's also in Captain America Civil War and credited as the MIT liaison during Tony's visit. There was also a Professor Jason Wilkes from the 1959 Marvel comic Tales of Suspense. He was a scientist who works with vision and light to make things invisible, and he had created an invisibility ray that he accidentally used on himself and made himself completely invisible. No voice, no body, he lost literally everything. The dean says this:
I brought you here because the field would have devoured 15-year-old you. So we tailored a course of study to your needs.
Regarding Riri's timeline, which we only know snippets of, we learn her educational journey later at Jim's junkyard. They have newspaper clippings, one written by Jennifer Clark, also the name of the art department coordinator, which states Riri Williams is the youngest ever to win at the Chicago Science Fair from the Chicago Central City Press. It details a young bright girl who made a robo-dog at only 12 years old and a junior at South Shore International College Preparatory School. The other clippings share her grad photo announcing her high school graduation in 2020. Cousin John tells us that she finished 9th grade at 11 and started college at 15. And this kind of conflicts with the newspaper statement that she began junior year 11th grade at 12 years old. It doesn't really add up, seeing as she finished freshman year at 11, she'd likely go into sophomore year at 12, junior year at 13, senior year at 14, and began college at 15, like both the dean and John claimed. However, I will note that if she did graduate in 2020, that means she graduated during the blip, which took place from 2018 to 2023. Although we now found out that she didn't blip, if she graduated from high school in 2020, that means she was 13 years old at the first snap, roughly a junior in high school, and everyone returned when she was around 18 years old. It's sort of implied in Far From Home that some of the students who didn't blip continued their studies and moved on, which could sum up Riri's blipped experience. In summary, this is just an opportunity for Marvel to stand 10 toes down on life, just pushing on so much that a girl just got enrolled in MIT during the blip and continued studying, because that's kind of wild. Riri is then expelled from MIT, escorted out by campus security. She takes her remaining pieces using her necklace to connect to them. We see a janitor in the background with his phone out, and he starts to film her. Later, Ronnie, Riri's mom, said that she paid a janitor to keep tabs on Riri, so this is probably that guy. As the pieces of equipment fly and latch to her body like Tony's suits do, T by Cobra plays. And we also learn from the students sticking up for her that Riri built that white suit from her own grant money, so she's allowed to take it. Riri flies off in her new suit, which would technically, I think, be her Mach 3 suit, seeing as the first suit was destroyed in Wakanda Forever, and her second suit was kept by the Wakandans. And her suit comes with Trevor, her new AI, TRVOR, which, as he says,
I'm Trevor, MIT's teaching robot and virtual operational resource, and your very own AI assistant.
I believe he is 100% inspired by Microsoft's Paperclip, the Clippy guy. Additionally, the credits say he's voiced by Marvel assistant editor James J. Al-Hul. Riri's student ID number is 30216RW, which correlates with Riri Williams' first debut in Marvel Comics in Invincible Iron Man issue number 7 that was released March 2nd, 2016, hence the 3216. And because Trevor loves playing my girl for a fool, When she says "Take Me Home to Chicago," he offers the band Chicago, and this is their 9th studio album released in 1977. It's a good album. We focus on this van in this quaint little neighborhood, and this van belongs to the Hood's crew, and it says Humboldt Electric, which is absolutely 100% upfront. They are lying, they are scammers. Also, I called the number, it led nowhere, so now you don't have to. However, I do like that it says your friendly neighborhood service, like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, you get it. Fun fact, around 2021, scammers claiming they could lower people's energy bills targeted residents in Logan Square and Humboldt Park, Chicago. In some cases, they would come to your door and say that utility work needed to be done on your property. They would then walk you into your backyard while an accomplice searched through your house. Now, writing for Ironheart happened roughly in 2021, around the same time as these reports, but if this was a scorned prop designer who was affected by the fake scammers of Humboldt Park, I would not be surprised. The team is in the middle of a heist, and each member plays an essential and specific role. Cousin John, played by Manny Montana, who you may know from Good Girls, sits and plays with his stiletto. He's Parker's HR man and getaway driver who also just loves knives. Then there are the Blood siblings, Roz and Jerry Blood, played by Shakira Barrera from Netflix's Glow, and Zoe Tarakis. Zoe you might remember from Talk to Me. They're based on the Blood brothers in Marvel Comics. The Blood brothers are a pair of hulking aliens who made their debut fighting Iron Man in the 70s. Roz and Jerry's names, as well as their tattoos and perhaps the lines in their hair, call back to the Blood brothers designs. Clown, played by Sonia Dennis, is the group's pyrotechnic specialist, as well as a lockpicker and safecracker, as we'll see later on. And then we have Slug, played by RuPaul's All-Star winner and famous Chicago native Shea Coulee, and they are a hacker. And I've received this TikTok from some of you in the last week from Scorpio Mars, who offers the idea that Shea Coulee's Slug could be Darnell Wade, aka Dark Veil, who also went by the alias Shade and was a mutant and drag queen whose powers are pulled from the dark dimension. This character was inspired by Shea Coulee and other drag queens, and she kind of looks like Shea Coulee too. I don't know if this is the direction Marvel wants to take this character, but I think it would be awesome and great. Plus, I'd get Jinx on Broadway and Shea in the MCU, my two worlds clashing, coming together. That's not a bad incursion. Along with the hacker Slug, we have Rampage, aka Stewart, who's played by Eric Andre.
Like the Aura X fellow at Rampage on the Tech Makers Discord?
Enchanté.
Rampage is a character from the comics as well. He actually becomes a member of the Hood's gang. Still, he's a very different character, armed with like an exoskeleton similar to Iron Man's, which increases his strength and enables him to fly. If you thought Eric Andre was supposed to be in something Marvel related, but you just couldn't remember, your instincts were right. Producer John here at New Rockstars reminded me of a Deadline article from 2022 that reported Eric Andre recently booked an episode of Agatha All Along. The scoop was removed from the article later on, so they may have just got their wires crossed on the particular show. Then we meet Parker Robbins, aka the Hood, played by Anthony Ramos. In the comics, Parker Robbins was a small-time thief who was doing small-time thief shit after killing a demon and stealing their hooded cloak and boots. Afterwards, he acquires the powers that come with them, and the Hood gets his powers from a bond with Dread Dormammu after Doctor Strange banished Dormammu from this dimension. So essentially, it's imbued with the magic from the Dark Dimension and Dormammu. However, we don't think that's 100% the case here in Ironheart in the MCU. We believe it comes from Mephisto, seeing as the red letter M was in the release schedule drop. It only makes sense. The MIT AI calls up Riri as she flies, saying this.
Vital signs indicate corporeal overload. Are you all right?
And then it points to a hologram of her heart, and Riri requests that he stabilize the cabin pressure because she needs more air. I think two things are happening here. Her suit is sealed, slowly cutting off her oxygen and making her start to choke. It's just a little moment, but it kind of sets up the scene in episode 3 where John and Riri are both dying from asphyxiation in the greenhouse. And the other option is that she's having an anxiety attack. It sets up the other times we see Riri start to have panic attacks, especially in the 3rd episode. Riri's armor shuts down because the AI, which is owned by MIT, sees that she's been expelled, and as she begins to crash, she's flailing over Chicago. We see 4 Bucket Boys playing and a man hooting and hollering about how Thanos was just the beginning and Tony can't save us this time, referring back to the Infinity Saga and Tony Stark's death in Endgame. Also, yeah, dude, you're not wrong. We all know that the end is near in the MCU. Doom's coming, the Fantastic Four could be coming. We also had to deal with Kang and the Eternals, leaders and gods and cosmic beings just rising out of the ocean. So this man spouting imminent catastrophes, like, yeah, buddy, we all lived in the MCU. Every day we're living in an imminent catastrophe. I mean, also, I think that this guy could be Mephisto. Not only is he in the black and red tones, but Mephisto thrives on deals and being cunning, and I bet for fun, he'd love warning people who aren't listening. Also, he loves to shapeshift. Why not? Thank you, BetterHelp, for sponsoring this video. It is rare for any adult to be doing exactly what they thought they'd be doing when they were younger. That's why you see so few rock stars who are also astronauts. Having a gap between expectation and reality is a normal part of being a person, but that doesn't make navigating that gap any easier. If you're feeling like you could use some help, consider using BetterHelp. A good therapist helps you see that you're not behind in life, you're simply on your own unique timeline. They help you recognize that your identity isn't fixed by some arbitrary deadline, but constantly evolving as you grow. This perspective shift alone can be just so beneficial. BetterHelp makes starting therapy easy. easy. Just head to betterhelp.com/newrockstars, fill out a questionnaire, and you'll be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Click the link in the description, scan the QR code, or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy. Riri crashes into the pavement, and her combined A posture with the manhole cover helps spell out Ironheart. And funny enough, this looks a bit like the Iron Maiden logo, and Ironheart creator Brian Michael Bendis has spoken about how Iron Maiden was in the running for Riri's moniker as an ode to the heavy metal band, but still with legalities, it made it too hard, so they just landed with Ironheart. Also, there is an Iron Maiden technically in Marvel Comics, but it was a villain, so it doesn't matter. As we get B-roll of Chicago locations, the real Avalon Regal Theater, Sim's Cleaners, that's directly across the street from Brown Sugar Bakery on East 75th Street. The song playing is Home Is Where the Hatred Is, performed by Gil Scott-Heron, and if you don't really know that song, you probably heard it sampled in Kanye's Late Registration, My Way Home. Both are Chicago natives. The entire neighborhood clowns Riri as she does a post-crash walk of shame down the street, and I love it. It is funny to me. The woman who goes, "Dang, that was you that just crashed? Yeah, girl, get out my face." Oh my God. And also this man calling her Iron Chick, Iron Ma, Iron Girl. Girl, get out of here. Poor Riri, she's going through it. This all includes this kid named Landon who charges her $20 to wagon her suit home for her. We now meet Xavier, and he's listening to a really great song, and we'll hear a little bit more of this song later when Riri's working in her kitchen. It's called You Need Me by Gorgeous George, courtesy of the Math Club, a music and composing company that did the theme song for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and other similar Marvel projects. Xavier is played by Matthew Elam. There was an Xavier King who lived across the street from Riri in the comics. This Xavier will later learn is Natalie's little brother. When she gets to her home, Riri's mom, Ronnie, played by Angie White, already knows she's been expelled because of the janitor she paid off. Ronnie has some friends over and they're all chit-chatting, and one of them has sage in her hands, and I'm pretty sure this is actually Cree Summers, who was confirmed to be in the show a while ago. She specifically says, "Come bring Riri by my shop so she can meet my daughter, they can get into some trouble." And later Riri refers to her as Miss Stanton, so she's Zelma's mom. In the trailer, when they're at White Castle, we see Reagan Aaliyah, who is rumored to be playing Zelma Stanton. From different set photos, they were also spotted shooting outside a place called Stanton Sweets, Reeds, and more. So this must be their family shop. The character Zelma Stanton is an apprentice to Dr. Strange in the comics. As a librarian from the Bronx, she was infected by mind maggots and sought out the help from Dr. Strange. After doing so, she was offered a job as his librarian. Later in her new friendship with Dr. Strange, him and Zelma are trapped in Weird World, one of the domains of Battle World, and through a series of unfortunate events, she's left with magical powers, eventually becoming Strange's apprentice. I don't think that's gonna happen in the show, but it makes sense to have like a mystical person be friends with Riri Williams. She asks Riri why she's obsessed with building Iron Man suits, and Riri says, "Because I can." And this will be a common refrain from her in the first few episodes, and later we learn it's what her stepdad Gary used to say when she asked him about his habit of fixing things around him. Stanton then sages Riri, removing the stank aura, which is pretty funny. We also learn that Black Obsidian is for wise asses kicked out of school. Who would have thought? Also, so many spells, so many practices, a little bit of rituals. Where is Mephisto? Where's Jennifer Kane? Riri hangs out with Xavier, and she tells him that she wants to build an Iron Man suit for recognition. Everyone cares about them, so she wants to be the best at making them. Sounds a lot like Pip in Great Expectations. To fund her suits, Riri even sold her Barracuda, the car that she fixed up with Gary, and this car was featured in Wakanda Forever. Riri was also really pumped to have that car back after it was destroyed in Wakanda Forever, so it must have been really hard for her to sell it. Ambition and recognition, and how far people will go to satisfy and achieve them, and Great Expectations, remember that book. These are also primary motivators for Parker Robbins, and is also motivating Riri, but their big difference is their moral compasses. John watches creepily as Xavier and Riri arrive back at her mom's place, and he's walking a dog, and I don't think we'll ever see that dog again, which makes me kind of nervous because John dies, and I hope that dog doesn't. John then invites her to meet his boss, Parker. The business card he gives her is for Desperitos Pizza, and there's a phone number on it, and again, of course I called it, it doesn't go anywhere. When she goes to the next day, she finds it closed, but it's unlocked. However, the whole thing is just a setup by Parker to see what Riri's really made of, and she gets locked in this elevator that's being filled with gas. This is literally a scene from Saw. She's told she needs to get a gas mask from a locked device, but she leverages the elevator door open instead, a combination of brute force and intelligence. As she does this, Parker and his crew watch from the cameras, and everyone's impressed, but Stewart, who I think knows he's about to be replaced. Riri escapes from the trap and encounters Parker, who appeals to her ambitions. He sees her potential and believes she can achieve more, but she's being held back by a system that doesn't recognize her abilities. He also hands her a large stack of cash, offering her a pretty big incentive to help him with 3 jobs. Inside Riri's house, her suit is set up in the middle of the kitchen. It hangs from the ceiling, suspended by chains, and this setup resembles the way her suit was depicted in the poster art, which I'm gonna come back to. She listens to a mixtape Xavier gave her as she works, and it contains a voice message from Natalie. This gets Riri in her feelings, and she has flashbacks to the night she was working on the Barracuda with Gary and Natalie before they were killed in a drive-by, leaving Riri as the only survivor. Something tells me we're gonna come back to this night. Did Parker have something to do with it? Can Mephisto help the situation? Or is it up to Riri to like learn how to mourn properly? We know from Loki and WandaVision that you can't really change fate. You can create alternate possibilities, you can even obstruct or manipulate situations to get a different outcome, but you can't really alter the past without affecting everything else. With Mephisto involved, there's a chance he could cut through all that complexity and bring someone back from the dead without any repercussions. During the Heroes Reborn storyline, Mephisto technically brings back Sentry. He's also resurrected Ghost Rider, Red Hulk, X-23 in the Venom comics. Although most scenarios have been part of a larger scheme or require some bargaining, depending on how Marvel uses his powers, this may be how he appeals to Riri later in the season with a deal. Also, we're gonna keep track of how many times they bring up souls, because he's gonna be dealing souls. He's in the business of giving and taking souls. Next, we see Parker taking off his shirt to get a tattoo from John, and his back is covered in raised black veins, and John tattoos over them to help cover them up, but they keep getting worse. And we saw a snippet of this in the trailer, and it looks like the hood is literally poisoning him or pulling his soul from his body. Okay, that time I said soul, but I swear in this show they say soul a lot. As this happens, Sinner Man by Nina Simone starts playing, and the lyrics are about a sinner who starts praying on Judgment Day, only to have waited too late, and God themselves sends the Sinner Man to the devil. I think the lyrics could be relevant because in the comics, the Hood gets their power from the bond with Dread Dormammu after Dormammu was banished from this dimension by Doctor Strange. This could be the same backstory they're using here, as we see by the end of episode 3 that it definitely has some demonic force behind it. Riri is brain mapping now. This involves mapping neural pathways, analyzing brain activity, and creating digital twins of your brain. It aims to enhance AI capabilities in image recognition, natural language processing, and understanding and responding to human emotions. This is crucial for developing brain-computer interfaces that can translate brain signals into commands for external devices, i.e. Riri's suit. The next morning, Riri wakes up to Natalie standing right before her, and the song No Evil by Sir plays us out. So Natalie is officially here! Through Riri's brainwave, she created an AI of her dead best friend with all the likeness and attitude, as we'll see later. This is also where I wanted to flag that this was done kind of the same with Vision and Ultron in the comics, and this accidental discovery I think will be featured in Vision Quest, as we know we'll be getting human form cameos from a lot of previous Stark AIs. In the original comics, Ultron was created by Hank Pym, not Tony Stark, and in the comics, Ultron hated his creator, having been made from Hank Pym's brainwaves. Like Hank Pym, Ultron fell in love with Janet Van Dyne and later tried to transfer her mind into a robot's body to be his wife. This would later become Jocasta, who will appear in Vision Quest. In Tom King's Vision family comics, Vision's wife Virginia was created from the brain patterns of the Scarlet Witch, his ex-love. Wanda offered this in hopes that Vision can make or find someone like her after being recreated as a new Vision, aka White Vision. While White Vision is searching for himself in Vision Quest, I think this discovery of Riri's will be featured or like stolen like her original contraption in Wakanda Forever. If this is spliced with a supernatural power to transfer them into another's body, it could be what Vision's searching for, or at least what Ultron is searching for, who we know is showing back up in the show. Funny and ironically enough, at the beginning of the episode, Riri says she's gonna be bigger than Stark, bigger than Pym combined, and I think it's beyond ironic that she choose those two who in different iterations have created Vision and Ultron, who in turn use their brainwaves to make their AI counterparts, just like Riri's doing right now. Episode 2 is titled Will the Real Natalie Please Stand Up, a play off Eminem's Real Slim Shady, a song that declares there's only one real Shady, just like there's only one real Natalie. Episode 2 starts with the previously on segment recounting the last episode, and the font used looks very similar to the Stark Industries font, which of course makes sense because it's an Ironheart show. But we pick up right where we left off with Riri waking up to AI Natalie. The sad part here, it's Natalie from the night she died, so Riri's only thinking about that moment as opposed to the earlier flashbacks with them on the steps, where she's wearing different clothes with pink accents in her braids. She's only thinking about Natalie right before she died. Oh, that's like getting an AI of your mom before she passed away. Like that would hurt me. Natalie says she is 3-dimensional light beams projected from the Ironheart suit. It makes a joke that she could be called a neuro-autonomous technical assistant and laboratory intelligence entity. But Natalie rolls off the tongue much better, which, as I mentioned in episode 1's breakdown, is the name she was given in the comic. In Riri's room, there's a lot of little details here similar to her dorm room at MIT, and you can tell the set designers had a lot of fun making a space that felt as much as Riri as possible. There's a Chicago Bulls mascot, a poster of a black fist, and the quote, "The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any," attributed to Alice Walker. Walker is an African-American author, perhaps most famous for writing The Color Purple. She won the Pulitzer Prize for the novel and was the first black woman to win for fiction. We also see a Black Lives Matter poster, a customized women working sign, more Chicago Bulls merch, and several trophies because our girl is a winner. There are some boxing gloves on the wall, so maybe she can throw her hands too. I know she can. I also know that Dominic Thorne did take up boxing to prepare for the role, so maybe it's for Dominic magnetic thorn. There's another robot on the desk under her vanity mirror, and this robot dog calls back to her newspaper article, the project that made her the youngest ever to win at the Chicago Science Fair. Underneath that is the Ka statue. They're a Brooklyn-based artist. It's only significant here because I remember her having 2 different Ka statues in her Wakanda Forever dorm as well. We can also see this red and black robot poster, and funny enough on iStock, which they use, if you Google evil robot under construction, this will pop up, which further reassures me that Riri's suit that she imbues with magic later on, like what we saw in the latest teaser trailer, will turn it into an evil robot per se. So she's building something bad, and I also think it'll be controlled by Mephisto's magic and then lose control. On her door, there's a Stark Industries sticker along with more robotic stickers, and then one for an honor society that she was a part of, and one for a Star Team Astro Camp. It seems like ever since she was young, Riri has been deep into camps and extracurricular activities. More details also speak to her love of cars, such as the Ford logo, a sign for Route 66, racing flags by her thermostat, and a sticker for Lang's racing manifolds. When Riri sits down to log into her computer, the wallpaper is the Barracuda that we've been seeing a lot of in the show so far. I also like that Natalie says this.
You are a mistake.
How, Sway?
This is so funny. This is a playoff when Kanye went on Sway, just hooting and hollering and went, "How Sway? How Sway?"
Yourself.
How, Sway?
Take a few steps back.
The writers knew what they were doing, putting that in there. Riri isn't too happy to see her though, and explains that she was trying to recreate Griot, and she tries bossing Natalie around, but gets frustrated when she doesn't obey orders, resulting in Natalie calling her Master Riri. So it's safe to say there's a little tension there. However, I do think it's very funny that Natalie goes,
"So you just gonna threaten my life and then ask for a favor?"
I think Natalie is very funny. I would love to have an AI of Natalie, but the fact that Natalie can, kind of break protocol or disobey orders feels like an insanely high risk for a potential harmful situation. The title reveal for this episode is a street sign reading South Ironheart Avenue, and I'm loving that the street related titles are playing so far. The last episode we got Ironheart spelled out in the cracks in the street. Parker's team watches an investor video for Tunnel, the company they're planning to rob, and Tunnel is owned by Sheila Zarate, and its main product is a series of retrofitted freight tunnels under Chicago that have been turned into a private highway. We don't get a lot of details on how this works, but it seems like wealthy citizens can pay to enter this tunnel system, and their cars are stripped to a device that can run along the old tracks, and they move super fast, skipping traffic and bypassing speed limits. They cut the investor video a little too early, so you can only hear a part of where she says the subterranean system utilizes electromagnetic blank, so we don't know what they say at the end. However, it does feel similar to the magnetic levitation used to send the trains in Wakanda. Their commercial also shows that they are an affiliate of Artwork Technology Company, which shouldn't sound familiar to us just yet. Still, briefly in episode 1, there was a poster for Artwork's creative solutions for our future, and the quote below says, "Making Chicago the world leader in sustainable technology. Arthur Robbins." In Marvel Comics, Arthur Robbins was the father of Parker Robbins, so the Hood already has his agenda against these people, seeing as their direct link to his father. Arthur Robbins doesn't actually appear in the comics that I've read, at least. He's mainly mentioned, and Parker's mother was very unwell, and Parker turned to crime to make ends meet to keep her in a better facility. It's suggested that his father left shortly before her diagnosis. He just wasn't present in their lives, and sadly Parker's mother would often see him and say, "Arthur, is that you?" And he would have to gently let her down, which is really heartbreaking. If Arthur Robbins is some version of Bill Gates but isn't caring for Parker's mother, this could explain why he's so dead set on bringing down his father's businesses while funding his mother's medical bills. Parker formally introduces the team now, and we already met them in the previous episode, but we get a few more details here. For instance, Slug was originally from Madripoor, the fictional city in Singapore. Madripoor was introduced in Shang-Chi. This is the same city where Simo took off his shirt and got his ass kicked by his sister in the cage match. We also saw the city in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The city has always had a sort of futuristic cyberpunk aesthetic, so Slug fits right into this world. Clown was in a workplace dispute when Parker recruited her, and we see her burning down a car. She's someone who broke bad and ran with it, which makes sense for her. John is introduced as Parker's cousin, and he claims to be a master of this.
I'm also highly skilled in the art of skirma de stiletto siciliano.
Noah, who co-wrote this with me, actually looked into this, and apparently there's a culture of knife fighting among Sicilians. He found this manual on the subject called The Sicilian Blade, The Art of Stiletto Fighting, which contains the cold opener. Stiletto fighting is the embodiment of Sicilian masculinity. It takes eyeball to eyeball contact, total commitment to the task at hand to cut your enemy open and make his blood spit onto the street until his life slips away. And I'm not sure if the writers of Ironheart found this book, but a hyper-masculine man with a total commitment to murder does perfectly describe John. John is also a character from the comics. Parker Robbins had a cousin named John King who helped him in his criminal enterprises. John would later become a servant of Thanos and the leader of the Zodiacs, a group that helped Thanos steal items to dominate Earth. Finally, Riri is introduced to Stewart, or should I say Rampage's replacement. No one seems at all bothered by this right now, but we later learn that Stewart was murdered by John, allegedly. He probably did it. Back at home, Riri's pulling up Stewart's contact, and below that it brings up an unknown person with the alias Silhouette. Silhouette is a Marvel comic character from back in the day. She and her brother are mutants and members of the Temple cult in Southeast Asia. She can manipulate the Dark Force, teleport, and hide in the shadows. Natalie helps her find a list of black market shoppers in the area. We also see the list of shoppers, which includes some fun little Easter eggs. Daniel Horvath is a frequent member of the crew on Marvel TV projects like She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night. Garrett Mitchell is an accountant who works for Marvel. Robert Lewandowski worked in the music department for Avengers Infinity War. Haley Turner was also an accounting clerk on Marvel projects, including Black Widow and Loki. Mark Walters was the art director on Hawkeye and Ironheart, as was Nate Dahlkemper. Ryan Airy from Screen Crush. I ain't even gonna act like I'm not jealous. I'm so jealous right now. Honestly, Marvel, let me know what I gotta do, but also good for you, Screen Crush. That is such an honor. Good for you, Ryan Airy. Matthew Petrosky was a camera operator on several Marvel projects, including Thunderbolts and Spider-Man No Way Home. Hero Lamb was a member of the crew on Hawkeye and Wakanda Forever, and Paul was in the art department for Spider-Man Homecoming and Thunderbolts. Note that all of these people, only Amy S. Hawkins and Ryan Airy seem to have never worked on Marvel projects, but Amy Hawkins did work on the Tomorrow War, as did many of the other crew on this list, so I wouldn't be surprised if she just helped at some capacity or was just a friend of whoever put this list together. Next to the name of black market buyers is a list of items Joe McGillicuddy has been purchasing, including experimental bioenhancements, prosthetics, and CryoFlow. More importantly though, our boy Joe has been dropping stacks. I estimate that he spent like $450,000 on what we're seeing here alone. There's also this really cute Easter egg, shows a robot arm that's very similar to the one that Tony used in the first Iron Man movie to help him build the suit. Natalie remembers things she and Riri did, like singing "03 Bonnie and Clyde" by Beyonce and Jay-Z together. Also a very good song, but it seems like the scanner was designed to model and build an AI based on Riri's brain, but not her memories. So she's confused when Natalie remembers something that happened to her and Riri. This doesn't really get explained, but I'm sure we'll get answers next week and as the show unravels. I think it's possible that Riri's brain scanner was just a lot more successful than she intended, or something demonic's happening. Riri has to go to Evanston to meet Joe and pays Landon to use his wagon. Next to Landon is a poster that reads, Tony Stark Sciences Expo, featuring funded research efforts in future world technology, May 5th through May 8th, and shows several flying UFOs over the city. Stark Expo was featured in the comics, and in the comics it was referred to as the annual Tony Stark International Sciences Expo like it is here. However, in the MCU, we had the Stark Expo in 2010 and Iron Man 2, and in the same movie we saw Howard Stark presenting the city of the future for the 1974 Stark Expo as well. On the subway, there's also a sign for artwork again, but directly across from that you can see a poster for Rogers the Musical. Can you imagine Rogers the Musical? I guess there are musicals that can go on for like 12 years, but Rogers the Musical will be going on for 30 years at this pace. When Riri arrives at Joe's, she sees him arguing with his neighbor Heather over her dog pooping on his lawn. I feel like I got to both intimately know and come to hate Heather in such a short amount of time. Joe is also played by young Solo himself, Alden Ehrenreich. Joe swiftly calls Riri an underprivileged youth, which, he really is like his daddy. I don't like that. I don't like that. Riri quickly blackmails Joe to give her the parts that she needs. Inside his house, this man has multiple live, laugh, love signs on his wall. He also uses orange is the new black as an example of how he'd do badly in prison when the Netflix show is famously about, a woman's facility. Not exactly the one that Joe would be going to, but I get the gist. Joe claims that Joe is his real name, but as we learn later, this is a downright lie because Joe is really Ezekiel Stane, the son of Obadiah Stane, the villain from the first ever Iron Man film. He's become a tech ethicist as a way to distance himself from his father, who went full-on supervillain and died trying to kill Iron Man. This perhaps explains why he lets everyone walk all over him, because we later learn he's also being blackmailed by his co-worker Frank. I've been on this scoop for a while, from Can We Get Some Toast, who mentioned that Zeke would appear in the show, and look, good on you. Good job. Can we get some toast? Zeke also comes from Marvel Comics. He is still the son of Obadiah Stane. He used Stark Tech and created cybernetic augments for himself on his own body, so he's both man and machine, and he hates Tony Stark and targets him and others aligned with him out of revenge. This is him in the comics, though. I don't think he really hates people that like Tony Stark that much. He might hate Riri by the end of the episode, but we'll get into it. On the way to the bunker, Joe puts on Alanis Morissette, You Oughta Know, and it's really giving Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Wakanda Forever. It's also a funny bit because I'm pretty sure the song is about a bad breakup, but it also feels like a super feminist empowering song, so go off, Joe. Joe takes Riri to his bunker and he stores all his black market tech purchases here, and it's very fitting for the son of Obadiah Stane to have a shady bunker full of weapons. But it's also full of even more live, laugh, love signs because this man is obsessed with being vanilla. Joe says he has the bunker to feel closer to his dad, but unlike his father, he wants to use technology to do more than make weapons or Iron Man suits. To Joe, or Zeke Stane, bionics are the future. This calls back to the inspiration for his character. In the comics, Zeke Zeke Stane was created by Matt Fraction, who designed him to be the evolution of Iron Man. Instead of being a man in a suit, Zeke upgraded his body with tech itself. In Fraction's words, the future of Iron Man is there's no gap between Iron and Man. He is also a villain in the comics, and we see Joe push back a little bit as he starts to blackmail Riri in episode 3, so I'm curious to see how far he'll go as a supervillain, if he'll even make it to a supervillain. I just think making him a tech ethicist is definitely an interesting direction for a character like this. Riri asked Joe about the ethics around creating an AI from a brain scan. He says the resulting AI would be efficient, but whether or not it would behave ethically would be a result of the person who was scanned. I can definitely see this becoming a plot point in future projects. If White Vision does what Vision did to him in WandaVision, he might just create a monster. The heist begins and Shaka Khan's playing another Chicago native and Riri's ready to go. Clown blows a hole into the tunnel system while the Blood siblings and John invade the tunnel command center. This is the scene that we also saw in the trailer, and the map for Chicago is still the same, which I noted is a little weird for me because I'm used to seeing Lake Michigan not at the top. The camera pans past Zarate in her car. It looks empty, but Parker is actually there, invisible. One of the Hood's main powers in the comics is the ability to turn invisible while holding his breath. And as you can see here, he's doing just that. If you watched the last season of What If, you might have remembered seeing this power in action when Zhu Jialing wore the Hood during her fight with Shang-Chi. We learned from Parker that the contract he wants Sheila to sign agrees to put him and his associates on Tunnel's payroll and give them equity in the company as anonymous co-owners. And a reminder that his father is a member of Artworks, the parent company, or at least a minor shareholder of Tunnel. It feels like Parker's motivation is to be the modern day Robin Hood, in the hood, wearing a hood, being the hood. Throughout his team's actions, they note the reasoning for doing this. The socioeconomic issues and the influence of market power, which lead me to believe that he's a hands-on activist. You know what I'm saying? He hates his father for being rich and not helping the little guys. A security guard pulls a gun on Riri as she comes out of the tunnels and Natalie freezes, and we learn later that she basically had a panic attack at the sight of the gun because it reminded her of the night she was killed. Riri is saved from the guard by Parker, who pulls some wanted shit and bends a bullet around Riri. Lord have mercy. After the heist, Riri is a little freaked out after Parker shot the guard and asks Clown what she knows about him. Clown says she heard a rumor that Parker wrestled his hood off of a demon, and in the comics, Parker stole his hood after seemingly killing a demon who was wearing it. So Clown is definitely foreshadowing some sort of demonic reveal, which we start to see at the end of episode 3. This is also when Clown says she saw Parker shirtless and he was covered in scales. I don't think they look like scales to me, but maybe Clown saw something a little different. Parker gives another speech about how he's the only one who really sees the true potential in the fellow gang members, and this man is so manipulative. Riri leaves the party and calls her suit down, and it floats down, and you can see the wings are actually solar panels and a lot of the stabilizers are fans, and it's just cool to see these little details in the suit design after she told Joe it was solar and wind powered. Behind Riri are a bunch of posters of a man in a suit with devil horns, and upon closer look, it says Faust, and it's Charles Gnu. This opera by Charles tells the stories of Faust, a man who feels disillusioned with his life, longing to recapture the vitality of his youth and experience life's pleasures. He invokes the devil Mephistopheles. The devil appears and offers him a tempting deal. So Mephisto is absolutely showing up. There's no way he ain't now. They're just teasing us. There have been so many hints to Mephisto showing up now. This one is just sealing the deal. To further back this up, Natalie tells Riri that Parker's hood gives off energy not from this dimension, and Riri dismisses it initially because in the MCU they have to deal with gods and aliens and wizards all the time. So she kind of has a point, but also Parker is definitely getting sketchier and sketchier more from this point on. Back in Parker's place, a demonic voice is whispering things to him. It's very creepy. It says, "Did you like it? What is it you most desire?" Then John enters frame and we can see a little Captain America piece. Actually, you know what? Let's continue on. John is getting uncomfortable with the toll the hood is taking on Parker, but Parker says it's the price he has to pay after what he did to me, which is so ominous, but would make sense from the context of having made some deal with a demon. This has to be in exchange for his soul. Also, the use of he definitely kind of implies now they're talking about Mephisto. Riri goes back home to find her mom waiting for her, and Ronnie met Natalie earlier and was impressed and told Riri it's like you brought back her entire soul. This language jumps out at me because at one point Parker could reanimate the dead in the comics, and I wonder if this is just setting up some sort of plot where he tries to bring back John's soul or makes Riri make an AI out of John. It also makes me a little suspicious of Natalie. Like, we never really understand how exactly she got created, and I wonder if there could be some demonic involvement here. Maybe from Mephisto, this could have been a gift. Ronnie asks Riri if she can make an AI out of Gary, and this is actually really sad. Of course she wants her husband back. This is sort of topical, where there's a rise of people finding that connection or emotional reliance on AI right now. Riri says she can't make one for her though because she doesn't even know what Natalie really is, and earlier when she was talking to John, he said the power needed to scan a human brain could turn it to goop. So Riri probably doesn't want to endanger her mom by scanning her brain. The episode ends with one of my favorite shots yet. As Joe returns home only to step in the poop of Heather's dog, he acts out in the tamest way possible and runs over to her garden with some shears, cutting a few of her flowers. Then with You Oughta Know by Alanis Morissette blasting, he stands up into frame with one of the flowers in his mouth, and it's just the funniest thing to me. It also struck me that the chorus of You Oughta Know kind of describes where Riri is emotionally with Natalie, and I'm here to remind you of the mess you left when you went away. It's not fair to deny me of the cross I bear that you gave to me. You oughta know. You oughta know. I love Alanis Morissette. Because when Natalie died, it left Riri with all of this baggage. I will also note in the post-credits, there's a special thanks made to Dr. Joy Harden Bradford, who I'm sure they got a lot of help developing Riri's unpacked mourning and anxiety. She's a psychologist that also hosts a podcast called Therapy for Black Girls. She's incredible. All right, now we're on to the final episode. Episode 3 is titled We in Danger, Girl, and let me tell you, we love a ghost reference.
You in danger, girl.
We open the episode with Riri and Clown throwing up their money around everyone, and as the Benjamins hit the floor, it spells out Ironheart, baby. Clown then appears wearing Parker's hood. Clown can tell by touch the hood is edging on theoretical physics, weird, and she and Riri are about to try and analyze the energy signature, but John shows up slamming Clown's head into the table. Harsh is the vibe, harsh is everyone's vibe, as Slug gives the heist rundown until John gives the most forced apology of all time. They begin going over their next hit, which is Heirloom and the Heirloom CEO Hunter Mason, and his new tech is putting local farmers out of business. Parker then tells Riri in a one-on-one about himself vaguely enough that he doesn't have to give too many secrets away, but enough to get Riri asking about his hood, asking if it's made out of something like vibranium or Pym Tech, two things we MCU fans know a lot about, but instead he counters it's magic. Parker says he doesn't care how his powers work, he just wants to protect himself and those he loves, which clearly cannot be his father since he's using it to take pieces of that man down. Xavier and Riri talk about Xavier's headphones, to which he says, I feel her soul in these, yet another reference to Natalie's soul. At the front door, Ronnie answers to see Joe, who showed up in hopes to talk with Riri, and as Ronnie suspects, yeah, this is all weird. And I don't care if he was 36, 28, 46. Who is this man in the middle of the night calling for you? Get him out of here. I also love how weird it is to see this white man on this side of town, or maybe just at night, because even this old lady's like, what in the hell's going on? Joe wants Riri's help fleshing out his ideas, and he lists off a bunch of bio-enhanced tech that he's been thinking up. 3D printed corneas, a second iron stomach, nanotech muscle fibers to increase strength, biomesh material for skin, laser enhanced fingernails. This is all definitely the start of his comic book persona as a bio-enhanced supervillain. Also, he's like Beth from Rick and Morty.
Invisibility cuffs, a parent trap, a lightning gun, a teddy bear with anatomically correct innards, night vision googly eye glasses, sound erasing sneakers, false fingerprints, fall asleep darts.
And it seems that Joe really took Riri's words about standing up for himself to heart, because now he's blackmailing people. Now Natalie blackmails Riri into hanging out, and she just got blackmailed twice in one day, just like Joe. Then Best Friend by Doja Cat and Saweetie plays, and they've now changed their outfits. I recognize that Nat died wearing yellow, but with Riri repping the red, it's like mustard and ketchup, Wolverine and Deadpool, happiness and anger. Ooh, no. As we transition, we get some B-roll of a mural in the back, and you can see the art commemorating Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland with Say Her Name above it. In the foreground, it's a mural designed by Milt Coronado and Tubbs commemorating Unity in South Shore, Chicago. We also see another poster with Arthur Robbins on it. Then we're taken to Adler Planet. Here we learn that Riri can guess the make and engine of planes in the sky. Back at Gary's garage, Riri starts to have a panic attack and flashbacks, and this causes Natalie to glitch out too. We actually saw another shared moment of a panic attack in episode 2 when the security guard pulled the gun on Riri. Riri didn't have a full-on panic attack then though, but she was definitely freaking out, and Natalie completely glitched. But this time, Natalie pulls herself together and guides Riri through a focused breathing exercise to calm her down. Riri's brain literally is linked to this AI, and we'll probably learn later how her mind can keep that consistent link. There's also a home video filter effect that they have layered over Riri's flashbacks, which we got at the beginning of episode 1. It's like her memories are tech coded, so old memories feel like old video formats, and I think that's really neat. When Riri gets back to her mom's, 2 police officers are there waiting for her, and they're investigating Stuart's death, and it looks like Rampage won't be rampaging anymore. Too soon? Never. Riri rightly assumes that Parker was behind Stuart's death, and she and Natalie make a plan to steal a piece of the hood so they can analyze it. Their plan involves using some of Joe's bio-enhancements to hide cutting lasers on Riri so she can sneak into Heirloom during their heist and secretly cut off a part of the hood while while Natalie pilots the Ironheart suit. This plan sounds completely insane, but wouldn't you know, it almost entirely worked. This is also a big problem that Dominic Thorne has mentioned in interviews, is that Riri does not fully understand the potential harm her actions can cause. Even after the events of Wakanda Forever, where she realized her family could be put in danger due to her choices, she's still learning about the consequences of her actions and the number of lives that can affect. At the same time, she remains blinded by her determination. She has no balance. John comes to Parker before the heist and warns him that he hasn't found leverage on Hunter and they should call off the heist. But after hearing his dad's quote on the news, that changes his mind. This is also the first episode where he's credited at the end as CEO of Artworks, is played by Paul Calderon from Pulp Fiction. Before the news report plays, we see Parker doing Vinyasa Yoga, which is a dynamic style of yoga characterized by flowing movements linked with breathing. Each inhale and exhale guides a specific movement, so it makes sense he practices breathing techniques when his power of invisibility requires him to hold his breath for a long period of time. Arthur Robbins through this news report, which quotes him saying, "These are simply petty thieves trying to make a buck using cheap tricks. They will be caught and brought to justice swiftly." Parker doesn't take this sitting down and convinces John that the heirloom heist is the right move. And I'm sure this will come back to haunt Parker as John ends up dying on this job, and the fact that he wanted out will only increase the guilt that Parker feels. Back at Joe's, Riri is convincing him to let her use some of his tech while also helping him with his own bio enhancements. I can't even show you what Riri is now doing with Joe, but it does involve digging tweezers into his arm to pull out pieces of his tech. No thank you. Joe makes Riri promise that if she uses his tech, it won't come back to him at all, and this naturally will come back to cause problems for her. Yep, 100%. Of course it was gonna happen. Then Riri finds his father's ashes and drops them on the floor, spilling some of it, and on the side of the Ziploc on duct tape, you see it says Obadiah S. The Chicago Spectre shows an article that says Obadiah Stane died in a plane crash, which we know isn't true. He was electrocuted and then he fell into the reactor, which resulted in a massive explosion at the end of the first Iron Man movie. Though Agent Coulson had told Tony before the press conference the alibi for Obadiah Stane.
That's being handled. He's on vacation. Small aircraft have such a poor safety record.
So to the world, he indeed died in a plane crash, and Ezekiel knows the true story. This also isn't the first time we've seen superhero stuff covered up in the MCU, and Agatha all along we learned that the Westview incident in WandaVision was likewise covered up, with the survivors being discredited as conspiracy theorists. And Thunderbolts, we saw Valentina publicly lie about her involvement in the Void attack on the Watchtower, so this type of public manipulation seems very common in the MCU. Riri says her stepdad Gary was a fan of Tony, which got her into building Iron Man suits, and Zeke says, "At least you had a good example. I had an Ironmonger." And I think this is only like the second time that Obadiah has been referred to as the Ironmonger, his comic book moniker. The team meets outside of Heirloom's lab and the heist begins. Riri has to swim underneath the facility to enter directly below, and it's interesting to think that this may have been where they needed a bit of Ryan Coogler's producing help, since he knows his way around shooting water since Wakanda Forever. Riri starts to cut a piece of the hood off, triggering a shutdown throughout the facility. As Riri sets off the alarms, the plan starts going belly up, and Slug says the episode's title.
Hood, we in danger, girl.
Damn, I love a Ghost reference.
You in danger, girl.
Hunter Mason, it turns out, is kind of a douchebag and antagonizes Parker, who straight up snaps his neck. Parker's eyes go full black for a second afterwards, which is classic film shorthand for demon. Then we start seeing Parker Robbins really in action, slamming the security down, disappearing and reappearing, using his weight to jump and kick folks in the chest, all while Riri's climbing through the vents trying to escape. Skrillex begins playing, which is gonna only make us more paranoid and scared, while simultaneously we see the Hood take each security guard out one by one, using his gun and magic to guide the bullets. Riri finds a way out of the vault and she runs right into John, who notices she got a piece of the cloak. John attacks Riri. Luckily though, Natalie saves her and she leaves John to choke and die on the poison. Yikes. Ruh-roh. The gang barely escapes and Riri and Natalie make it home during a lightning storm, and unfortunately, Riri starts to panic, forgetting that in her fight with John, she lost the biomesh that surely will be found and brought back to Zeke. Back at his apartment, Parker is losing it. He talks to the demon, asking if this was all part of the plan. In response, the demon shows him John's last moments, and then it shows Riri's suit's shadow appearing, and now he knows that it was Riri. Keep in mind, this isn't their last job. John in the first episode mentions they have Tunnel, Heirloom, and the big job. So there is one more job that I assume would have been the strike against Artworks as the final job. Whether that's still the plan, we don't know yet, but there's still a course that they plan to follow. And as our 3-episode premiere comes to a close, we anticipate that the next few episodes will dive into the consequences of Riri's actions. There's a strong possibility that that biomesh will be traced back to Ezekiel, despite Riri's promise that it wouldn't be. And additionally, the team will discover that Riri killed John. Yeah! It's also worth noting that from the trailers that we've seen, Riri's suit will be imbued with elements of magic, which I assume will make it easier to defeat the Hood. However, between that snippet and the unsettling poster featuring a suit with a mind of its own, I expect Mephisto's monkey paw deal will take control of Natalie or result in her destruction, while his spell could dominate Riri's suit. It's like Chucky all over again. Also, is this the beginning of Riri's like bad girl story? Is she gonna be an anti-hero? Like, I don't think she's a bad person. She has good intentions. She's just doing it in bad ways. Comment down below your thoughts on this 3-episode premiere. Oh my God, where do you think it's gonna go? She kind of did kill a man. I don't know. It was self-defense. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments. Huge thanks to my Natalie, Noah Chen, for tag teaming this with me. I love you, Noah. Thanks for writing it with me. We're gonna give you guys the next 3 episodes later down the line. And a special thanks to one of our YouTube members, Bro, who supports us at the executive producer level. Follow me at Lulu_Clemons. Subscribe to all 4 channels in the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Mephisto!